Live from downtown Detroit, home of WDIV and Click on Detroit, Local 4 News at 5 starts now.
Sun's out now, 50s on their way, but we've also got a major winter storm that's going to be here when we see the backside of those 50s.
But we begin with Help Me Hank demanding answers in the Green Ooze investigation.
So who made the mistake? Who's being held responsible for that?
Do state investigators believe the public is in danger? We're told test results are coming soon, but as we wait, there are real questions tonight about what was happening inside electroplating services in Madison Heights and why action wasn't taken sooner to clean it up.
And now those living nearby fear their health could be at risk. Consumer investigator Hank Winchester went to Lansing today to ask the tough questions. And Hank, the state is working to get answers, and fast.
Yeah, they certainly are, Kim. They've taken those soil samples, also samples of water, working to get those results. You'll remember this became a huge issue when that green ooze was spotted here along 696. This is the building at the center of this entire controversy. And those who live and work nearby say tonight they're left with few answers.
Toxic ooze, an eyesore, a danger, a huge problem for the state, which knew this was a potential danger for decades.
Clearly somebody dropped the ball, right?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, according to
It seems pretty easy to know. If the cleanup had been done and the work had been done, and then I'm driving along the highway and ooze is coming out, clearly the site was not properly cleaned.
Well, we did the site assessment, and that did not have any indication that this was going to happen.
But it did happen.
When cleaned originally, this project didn't qualify for the level of funding that may have prevented this mess from happening now. Bottom line, it's clear the cleanup done previously wasn't enough.
So who made the mistake? Who's being held responsible for that?
Well, this is an issue that has been ongoing for decades.
That's what blows my mind. It has been going on and on for decades, and it was never resolved until ooze seeps out onto the roadway.
Well, as Governor Whitmer suggested, we really need to look at enforcement, and she's called for a bipartisan approach to provide the funding we need to have consistent and assertive enforcement on environmental, tragedies like this.
We've learned violations had been issued for years, dating back to the 90s. And beyond that, those who live nearby tell me they've been left in the dark.
That's the big concern around with the residents is mostly like, how safe are we?
In talking with the people that live near there, nobody's heard a peep from the state. Nobody from a state agency has knocked on a door, sent a letter, said, oh, by the way, you know that green ooze that you see just a few blocks away? It's okay. How come nobody's reached out to people that live there? If you live there, wouldn't you want to hear from the state?
Well, we are working with our partners, and we are planning upcoming town hall meetings. We understand there is concern.
Yeah, a lot of concern. Back out here live, one of the big questions moving forward is how this could affect the health of those who live and work nearby. The state saying today they do not believe that this is going to affect these people in an adverse way, but they can't say with 100% certainty that everything here is A-OK until those test results are back. We're live here tonight in Madison Heights. Hank Winchester, back to you.
Yeah, and Hank, you mentioned those test results. When can we expect to see those results?
And Kimberly, there is the possibility that the first round of test results could be available on Friday, not just water and soil results from here, but also from other properties owned by Mr. Sayer, if not by Friday, early next week.
Okay.
Back to you.
We'll be following it. Thanks, Hank.
Let's turn our attention now to the weather because Ben is focused on some big changes headed our way starting tomorrow and going through the weekend. Could be a mess.
Yeah, precipitation, lots of it coming, but the big question is, will it be rain, snow, or ice, right, Ben?
Yeah, Kim, and it looks like very little of this is going to be snow. Usually we could breathe a sigh of relief this time of year having said that. That is not the case this time. There's going to be more water than we can handle. Flood watches have already been posted here across Illinois, Indiana, and parts of Ohio, just up to our area. We're not in them right now just because of the timing. As that system gets closer, we'll likely be under a watch for Friday and Saturday as that system approaches. So for the rest of tonight, we're dry, and at least a good chunk of Thursday. But we get into Thursday night and Friday morning. This is just the very beginnings of this system starting to push into our south zone by 1 a.m. on Friday. And once it starts raining, it is not going to stop until Sunday morning. 2 to 3 inches, 3 inches plus of liquid expected. There's still some question as to what type of precipitation this is going to be. We're fairly confident most of it's going to be rain. And if it does fall this hard and this fast, it is going to cause significant problems. So we'll break down what we're facing and also the timing of this coming up in just a few minutes. Guys?
It's breaking news now in the Ukraine plane crash in Iran. We've learned there are local victims killed in that crash. The University of Windsor says in a statement at least 5 people killed in the crash are students or researchers at the university. Their names have not been released. The school is offering counseling services for students tonight, and Canada's Prime Minister says 138 passengers on that plane were traveling to Canada, including 63 Canadian citizens.
Meanwhile, President Trump confirmed today that no one was hurt in the Iranian airstrike that targeted U.S. troops in Iraq. He also took a more measured tone as both sides perhaps try to de-escalate the crisis. Alice Barr following it from Washington. Alice?
Devin, President Trump is crediting an early warning system for allowing American and Iraqi troops to get to safety, while some analysts speculate Iran may have intentionally avoided doing serious damage to keep from plunging into a wider conflict. Today, a step back from the brink with the news no Americans were hurt in Iran's missile strikes on Iraqi bases housing U.S. forces. President Trump is playing down the attacks.
Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
The president's previous tough talk of military action shifting to a vow for punishing new economic sanctions that will remain.
Until Iran changes its behavior.
While saying he wants peace, the president began his statement with these words.
Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
And just hours after Iran's supreme leader called the missile strikes a slap in the face for the killing of its top general, the president again defended his decision to take out Qasem Soleimani.
We took decisive action to stop a ruthless terrorist from threatening American lives.
Top administration officials briefing lawmakers today on the intelligence behind the drone strike on Soleimani. The two parties coming away with vastly different impressions.
Not only did the president make the right call, but that this was a clear and present danger.
Utterly unpersuaded about any evidence about the imminence of a threat that was new or compelling.
Democrats criticizing the president for lighting a fuse.
Though he's trying to pretend as if he's the firefighter.
And even with hostilities seemingly on pause today, military analysts are warning the threat from Iran is far from over. Military and diplomatic outposts in the region are still on high alert. And with Iran's supreme leader saying today military action is not enough, cyber attacks remain a real threat. In Washington, Alice Barr, Local 4.
Okay, Alice, the tensions with Iran certain to come up tomorrow in Toledo. That's where President Trump and Vice President Pence will be holding a campaign rally. It is set for 7 p.m. at the Huntington Center, downtown Toledo, and our cameras will be there.
Well, it's safe to say he bled green and white. George Perles, an icon of Michigan State football and the university as a whole, has passed away. Perles played football for Michigan State, then was the team's head coach.
And went on to serve as MSU's athletic director and then later a trustee. Rod Maloney looks back at the long legacy George Perles leaves behind.
I would expect the University of Pittsburgh, Penn State, Michigan to buckle up. Maybe everybody in this room doesn't understand that term, but if you write it, they will.
On July 16, 1934, Detroiters Julius and Nellie Perles had their one and only son, George Julius Perles. In 1952, he graduated as an all-state lineman from Detroit Western High School in the days before they wore face masks, which in many ways defined George's approach to the game and even life. Western won the state championship that year. Graduating at the height of the Korean War, George went directly into the Army. When he completed his tour in 1956, Perlis played tackle for Michigan State for another MSU football coaching legend, Duffy Daugherty. But George's playing career abruptly ended in 1958 when he blew out his knee as a sophomore. Still, with football in his blood, he stayed a Spartan as a student coaching assistant. In 1972, though, opportunity knocked as Pittsburgh Steelers Hall of Fame coach Chuck Noll hired George to coach his defensive line. There, George blossomed into one of the great football minds in the game's history. He designed a defense called the Stunt 4-3, which fans eventually nicknamed the legendary Steel Curtain defense. With George as defensive coordinator and later assistant head coach, the Steelers built a 1970s dynasty, winning 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. Michigan State hired him away as its head football coach.
And I want you to play tough. I want you to play mean. I want you to play with strength. I want you to play as tough as you can. And if you're tough and you do it within the rules, when you come in this locker room, I'll be proud of you. And that's all I can ask from you.
He arrived in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl.
Michigan State has it, and they now can genuinely celebrate. The Big Ten has come to Pasadena and will go home a winner.
With his success, George got an offer to coach the Green Bay Packers. He parlayed that into becoming MSU's athletic director for a controversial couple of years. By 1994, the Spartan football program hit tough times again. MSU fired George after the NCAA said that he lost institutional control. George and MSU settled that contract out of court.
He supported the Special Olympics. In 2008, he ran unsuccessfully for Michigan governor. Voters elected him to the MSU Board of Trustees twice thereafter, though. In his second term, the Larry Nassar scandal hit the university. The board, including George, took considerable criticism for allowing Nassar's long tenure before Nassar was sentenced to life in prison for molesting gymnasts under the guise of medical treatment. By then, Parkinson's disease had struck, forcing George into a wheelchair. And it was Parkinson's that forced Perlis to resign from the board at the end of 2018.
So associated, of course, with Michigan State, you may forget that NFL experience. Was there ever a more famous defense than the Steel Curtain?
Steel Curtain defense.
It was his work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're lucky we had him for so long.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, more coming up.
New at 5.
A viral moment from last night's Red Wings game has our neighbors from across the border reaching out to say thank you. Karen?
And what is going on right here? A huge sinkhole forms after a dock collapses into the river. Local 4 Defender's drone has the latest footage and some documents from the state exposing another violation. My exclusive next.